If the name Orvene Carpenter sounds familiar, it's because you can find it on the front of the Orvene Carpenter Community Center. Orvene's building is located on Park Avenue, right next to the Ray D. Pruder Library. Orvene holds the record nearly 3 decades for the longest serving city council member in Port Hueneme. He was our Port Hueneme postmaster from 1970 to 1975, but he worked for the U.S. Post Office for a whopping 40 years. On January 27, 2024, we celebrated Orvene's 99th birthday. Just to let you know, we are all saving the date for his 100th birthday in 2025. There is no better storyteller we know than Orvene Carpenter. The Museum Governance Committee has officially invited Orvene to chat about the city known since 1948 as Port Hueneme, but I suspect that he, like many of the city's pioneers, will always call it Hueneme. So let's kick it off with everybody's favorite Orvene Carpenter story. Take us back to the Bank of Hueneme when Hollywood came to town.
There was a person came to town claiming that he had made a movie. He needed one more chapter, and that was to rob a small town bank. He sold the idea to the bank president that they would use the Bank of Hueneme, which is now the museum, as their bank to rob. They assured the bank president that they had their own counterfeit money and that they would need a lot of extras. Labor back in the Depression days was 10 to 20 cents an hour. They signed up a lot of extras. In fact, the Women's Improvement Club, all of the women joined and showed up the day of the shooting with their best dresses, hats, and gloves on. And they practiced robbing the bank all week. Come Friday, when it's time to really perform the robbery, the person that worked forgot to bring the counterfeit money. They convinced the bank president it would look lots more real if they used real money. And they got him to bring out, I think it's approximately $30,000. And they practiced a time or two, the robbery. They had a supposedly camera inside the bank, one outside the bank, and a car would come around the corner, and the robber was in the bank, and he would rob the bank, run outside, jump in the car, and then the director would yell cut, and they'd do it again and again. And they practiced all week. But today they forgot to bring the money. They practiced a couple of times, then they hopped in their car and left town.
They never came back, right?
Never to be heard of again.
So, and the bank was out $30,000, right?
Right.
Yeah. And what about the camera? Was it a real camera?
There was no lens in the camera, just a wooden box with a black sheet over their head, pretended to be taking pictures. There was one outside and one inside. Now, Mr. Green was the president of the bank, and when I came to Port Hueneme in 1945, he was still the president of the bank. So he didn't get fired over the robbery, but it was the talk of the town that the whole town came out and watched the bank be robbed. No one realized that they were actually robbing the bank.
That's a great story, Orvene. Now, you said you didn't always live in Port Hueneme. You came in that after the war. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Arkansas on a farm.
320 acres? Is that right?
How much?
320 acres? Yeah. So what was that like?
Well, there's a lot of hard work. We grew cattle, a lot of feed for the cattle. Put up a couple of 100 tons of hay, sold a lot of hay. My dad traded 3 tons of hay for a used bicycle for me.
That's a lot.
Hay would sell for $5 to $6 a ton. Now, 21 bales thereabouts would weigh a ton. And in the wintertime, the price could go up because hay was scarce.
So
One time, Bob and Dad made a trip to California. They left my sister and I there by herself. And Dad pointed out to me so much hay could be sold, the rest we had to keep for our own use. He had 2 grades of hay. One was alfalfa, the other was just plain Mabuta grass. The alfalfa was higher price. I came home from school one afternoon and a guy was there with a big truck and he needed hay. And he told me he'd take all that I had. He was looking at the more expensive hay, asked me how much it was a ton. I told him it was $7. Well, he took all the hay we had for sale. A lot of the hay was just $5 or $6 a ton. When Dad got back, found out I had charged him too much, he wanted to refund him, but we didn't know where he came from or who he was, so.
Oh, that's a nice story. Now, I know you met your wife Georgia in the 4th grade.
Right.
Yeah, you were really childhood sweethearts. But you didn't actually pop the question until much later, I'm pretty sure, right? When did you do that?
Well, she says I never asked her.
Oh,
We were friends through school. I got tagged as an older boy because on the farm you could get driver's license at 14. I drove to school, my sister and I, starting at 14. Gasoline could be delivered on the farm for 12 cents a gallon. It was cheaper for me to drive to school and the war was on. Couldn't find help. We milked 12 to 14 cows twice a day. I could stay home longer, do more chores, and drive to school, and get home earlier in the afternoon. And 2 senior boys drove to school, and me, a 14-year-old. I think the girls in my class figured I was older. But Georgia never dated in high school. Of course, she left Arkansas and came to California, finished her last year at Oxnard High. The coal mines in the area where we lived worked out. There was no more work for the coal miners. And the Longshoremen's Union and the Coal Miners Union was the same union. A lot of the coal miners came to Port Hueneme to work as longshoremen. There was probably 500 families moved from the area where we were raised to Ventura County and worked as longshoremen. Her dad was a longshoreman after being a coal miner. Dad was an ordained minister, pastored the local church with no salary, and we grew most of the food that we ate on the farm. We had apples, peaches, pears, plums, berries, and Mother canned everything that we grew in the garden.
You have a really big family. When you finally married Georgia, and you married her here after you got out of the service, is that correct?
Right.
And you popped the question where?
We went up to the cross in Ventura, and I gave her the rings that I had bought.
And you didn't bother to say, will you marry me? You just assumed she would?
I told her, as long as we had known each other, I thought it's understood.
Okay. Well, you had 3 children. They're right in front of you there. And then those 3 children gave you, 6 grandchildren?
Right.
And those 6 grandchildren gave you 9 great-grandchildren. And I understand there might be a great-great-grandchild on the way?
Trevor's oldest boy, Tommy, and his wife, Anna, are due to have a baby April the 1st, and that will be my great-great-grandson.
That's wonderful. Okay, you were married to Georgia for 75 years. What was the secret to your success?
I really don't know. The doctor asked me the other day, and I told him that I hadn't been shot by a jealous husband yet. So.
That was the answer. Okay.
But we were married 75 years, 1 month, and 11 days.
Before she passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She passed away 1 day before she was 95.
Oh. She was a fantastic person. I think she loved everybody, right? Yeah. But the other, I didn't know any of your other children except one, and I learned to really like him too. His name is Dennis.
Dennis was a policeman.
Yeah, he sure was, and he worked for the sheriff's department for a long time. He started out, I believe, right here in Port Hueneme, and then eventually became
Right.
a deputy sheriff. There's this he had quite a sense of humor, which you probably got from you. And he was a little prankster, wasn't he? Can you tell us?
He was.
Can you tell us about his evil twin?
Yeah, when he got in the 9th grade, he was a little guy. He had a friend, Dave Cox, and they looked like 6th graders. Dave had a sister that was a senior and a blonde. The first few days of school, Dennis told his mother that the teacher alphabetized the class, and he got the last right seat of the row next to the windows, and he couldn't see the blackboard. And the teacher said that he probably needed glasses. So she took him to our doctor, and he did need glasses for distance. And he got the largest black horn-rimmed glasses that he could get. And they put a chain on each earpiece. When he didn't need them, he could just drop them on his chest. Well, the first day at school, when he met Dave's sister, she said, "Dennis, I didn't know you wore glasses." He acted like he didn't know her, just kept walking, and she said, "Dennis, I'm Dave's sister." He said, "Oh, you called me Dennis. You don't know me. I'm Danny Carpenter." Dennis don't wear glasses, but I do. Now that, if it went on just a week or 10 days, you'd have thought that was enough. But at the end of the school year, we run into this girl in a store, and Dennis had another friend named Danny Garcia. Danny was a little guy and was a good football player. His freshman year, he took the quarterback position away from the varsity quarterback. He was so good. Well, everybody knew Danny Garcia. His dad worked in the post office with me. Well, this girl asked me, "How do you tell Dennis and Danny apart?" I said, "It's easy, Danny's a Hispanic." She said, "No, I mean Danny Carpenter." Who? She turned to Georgia and started complimenting Georgia on always dressing them just alike. One of them told her that if Mother went to buy a shirt and couldn't find two just alike, she went somewhere else. She always bought two pair of socks. And she could buy darker pants easy, they look alike. She always laid their clothes out. Wouldn't let them out of the house unless they were dressed just alike. Now this went on for the whole school year. And she said she just loved Dennis. He's so nice. But she said that Danny is getting to be a smart aleck. She said sometimes I have lunch with him and he's just rude to me. So I thought, this girl needs to know we don't have two boys. And I told her, we only have one boy and it's the one you like. Well, she didn't believe me. She went to Georgia. Georgia said, no, Dennis likes to play tricks on people, but we don't have twin boys. And she went out of the store marching like a soldier, and I'm gonna kill that kid, I'm gonna kill that kid.
She didn't kill him, but
We got home and he was sitting there, and I said, Daddy, we saw the Cox girl today. He put his glasses on. I said, you're in big trouble. He put his glasses on. He said, she wouldn't have hit me with my glasses on.
oh, yeah, okay.
But he said, I knew she was blonde, but I thought she got it out of a bottle.
Oh, okay. I want to take you back to Harbor Days. Harbor Days was a regular celebration every year. Was on the 4th of July weekend? Was that when it was?
Yeah.
And I think it lasted something like 50 years. They had it every year. What went on there?
Well, the businessmen in town put on a show called The Men's Follies.
Oh, I was hoping you would talk about
They
that.
dressed up like a woman. We kidded Dr. Moses, he was on the city council with us. He made the ugliest looking woman in town.
Ray Pruder was pretty good looking though. I thought.
Ray could sing good, and he opened the show usually. And
They did dance.
Johnny the Barber, he acted as the local cop.
Okay.
And we had a carnival in town. I was active with the DeMolay boys, and I'd bring the boys, and we sold all the tickets at the rides.
Okay.
And the city got a percentage of what we took in. One of my DeMolay boys wanted to be a cowboy, and he owned a little VW. He had a saddle, but he didn't have a horse. But he carried a alert rope with him all the time. He was always playing with his alert rope. Well, one night, a crook grabbed one of our cash books and boxes and ran with it. Well, Shackelford, one of our Hueneme policemen, was about 6'5" or 6'6", should have been able to run fast, took off after the guy, and the guy was getting away. But this kid with his alert rope saw the race, he got his rope out, and when the crook passed close by, he put the rope around the guy's neck. The guy's feet went higher than his head when he got to the end of the rope.
Yeah.
So
That was the end of his being a
Shackelford and the other policeman didn't worry about the kid with the
Lariat,
after
yeah.
that.
I think, yeah, lasso, lariat, yeah. Well, a lot of kids wanted to be cowboys, but he actually did something good with it.
Yeah,
So you have a very special cap that you wear, a veteran's hat. The reason it's so special is because it has not only World War II on it, but it also has Korea. So not everybody's served in both of those wars. Because you're one of the few remaining people around that served in World War II, I hear you get to speak to school children about the war. What kinds of questions do they ask you?
what you say?
The kids that you talk to about World War II.
Well, they asked me where I served, how the weather was. I joined the Marines in July of '43. In December of '43, I was in the South Pacific until early 1945. The squadron that I joined, we were involved in 3 different invasions. The Gilbert, the Ellis, and the Marshall Islands. In between each invasion, we did patrol duty for the fleet. Flying low, slow, looking for submarines. When I was mayor of the city, the admiral of the Japanese fleet
Oh.
came to Port Hueneme because we were outfitted one of their boats with missiles. And he asked to meet with the mayor. Well, when we met, he asked me what I was doing on May the 28th, 1944. I said, well, I guess I was chasing Japanese submarines. He said, well, there's one you didn't get. My dad was a skipper of a submarine. That was when the Admiral was born in '44. I went back aboard the ship with him, had lunch with him. He demonstrated the equipment they have today he led up the east coast of Japan, and as we went up the coast, there's a very good golf course at Matsushima. I told him I had played golf there many times. And it was real interesting, but then he pointed to the old equipment and he said, that never fails. This electronic equipment can fail, it does fail. But he said that the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper in the sky, you could always find your way home by using those.
Korea really affected Port Hueneme because there were so many people that came out and were at the base. People were renting out their garages, they were renting out their extra rooms, all kinds of different things. What was Korea like for you?
Well, the reason I wound up in Korea, the post office pay was very low. And I enrolled in Ventura JC. Not being a full-time student, I couldn't make the basketball team over there. I played basketball in high school. The California National Guard was practicing in the gym, and they recruited me to play basketball with them. Now, I did, and then they told me, if you don't join, you can't play anymore.
Oh.
I said, I thought I did. They said, no, we're guards. You have to join the California National Guard. So I joined. And September of '50, the California National Guard was activated for the Korean War. So I was a Marine in World War II. Here I was in the Korean War at Army, and I already had 5 years postal experience. When we got on active duty, which is Vandenberg, back then it was called Camp Cook, I transferred to the post office. And I was in charge of the division post office as a master sergeant the whole time that I was gone. So my postal career, I started February '46 in Port Hueneme, in the post office,
Oh,
and continued at Hueneme until 1975. Oxnard became open. I applied for Oxnard and was promoted from Port Hueneme to Oxnard. That was quite a change. And Port Hueneme had 25 employees working from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. 3 of those employees were carriers. I went to Oxnard. It was 450 employees, over 100 routes, which meant there was about 150 of those people were carriers. We processed roughly 1 million pieces of mail every 24 hours. It was a large operation. I enjoyed it, but it took a lot of time. And
you know, Port Hueneme didn't have mail delivery for quite a while. Were you part of that when they went from the mailboxes at the post office?
yeah, everyone had to come to the post office and get their mail. And I was a window clerk. And I really think that I knew every person in town, because they had to come either to a mailbox in the lobby or to my window to get their mail. And we only had 3 carriers and one substitute. But
Well, you're quite a trickster too. I think you had this, there's a story about you and those wanted posters that that you always hang in the post office.
what was that?
You remember there was in the post offices they always had these wanted posters, you know, FBI
Oh, yeah.
did, and you played a trick on somebody, right?
Yeah, the FBI sent out wanted posters, and as they were captured, we took them down. There was a young school teacher at Bard School. This was after we moved down on Pleasant Valley Road with the new post office. She saw me taking them down and asked what I did with them. And I told her they'd been caught, so we just throw them away. She asked if she could have them. She thought it's a good tool to teach her students to never let your picture be shown on the post office wanted list. And Bob Hodge was the principal over there. Bob and I worked together on the Men's Follies and the Harbor Days. And I told him about her collecting those, and he was in the office, and they delivered to the Port Hueneme post office a very nice copy machine. It would enlarge, it would reduce, print on both sides, staple the pages together, print in color. And some of those were laying there, and the guy picked up one of them and run it through the machine to show us what it would do. I think we both came up with the idea at the same time to superimpose that teacher's picture on one of those posters and let her find it when she went to teach. Well, she found it all right.
So Tell us about Jim Daniels. Jim and you worked together on the city council for many years, but you also served together and ended up, I think, on the same island. Is that true?
We were on the same island. Jim ran the water distill plant. The island was Hueneme. It's about 600 feet wide and 7 miles long. Now, we had a truck that had a 800-gallon water tank on it. There was an Army detachment beyond us, and they borrowed our truck to go down and get their water. You could only get water a certain time. And a few hours later, my lieutenant sent me down to get water in the same truck. Well, they weren't going to give me water because I'd just been there, they said.
Oh.
Well, Jim was the guy running it, a young kid, I thought, which he was. But he spotted my dog tags and said, no, the other guy that was here was an Army. His dog tags are Marines. And I got water. Now, we didn't really know each other, but they went around and filled up our Lister bags so we'd have drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
But we were only about 10 degrees off the equator, so a cool day was like 115.
Oh.
I've seen it up to 127. But after we got out of the service, and we were together in scouting, and then to the city council, and got to talking about World War II, and realized that we were on the same island, and that I'd been down to his plant, because he had a stack of salt down there as big as this building.
Wow.
Where he, it was reverse osmosis, they called it. And ships use it all the time to make fresh water. But that was his job, was to run the water distilling plant.
So you were on the city council first, and then he came on? Is that what
Right.
happened?
Yeah.
What was it like to work with him?
Pardon?
What was it like to work with him?
You couldn't change his mind on anything.
Oh,
If he made up his mind, it was there.
But I think he was the one who nominated you, the community center to be named after you, right?
Right, he did.
And
Yeah.
Ray Pruder's the lot. But he never nominated himself, did he?
No,
It's pretty
there was
modest.
only 3 buildings, and
That's true.
they didn't name a street
Yeah, they
or
should have.
anything like that after any of us. So.
Yeah. Well,
Now, the first council, there's a Dull Drive, that's where I lived on Paul.
mhm.
Now, Paul Drive was named after one of Bill Miranda's brothers. He had a brother named Paul. Also, he's got a son named Paul. Florence was Orrin Brown's wife's name.
Oh,
Myrna and Joyce was his 2 daughters.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's a Jerry Drive up there. I don't know who that was after, unless it was Jerry Strawn.
Yeah. Any idea about Pearl, or? I always thought that must have been named after somebody's wife.
I can't remember, but I did know.
Yeah, okay.
And Maxine was part of Orrin Brown's family.
Yeah, so Ventura Road was actually 4th Avenue, right?
4th Street, yeah.
4th Street, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a main street, but that no longer exists.
No, it ran along behind what the hotel is now.
Right.
And it connected to Market Street.
You saw a lot of changes. I mean, you got there, what, 1945, is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. And
November 45.
we incorporated in 1948.
Yeah.
And so you saw that first city council, and how'd they do? How do you think they did?
Well, They did good,
Yeah,
especially the redevelopment.
that was an important thing. That
That
didn't
was-
come, that was in the what, 50s or 60s? Maybe the 60s? Yeah.
Yeah.
What
It
happened
started
with,
in '63, I think.
right.
Or Bill Miranda was the city manager. Paul Sturm and Ray Pruder was for redevelopment. There was 3 other councilmen that wasn't.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Moses and I were put on a committee. The name of the committee was For the Betterment of Port Hueneme.
Ah,
Well, come election time, Dr. Moses and I were tagged to run. I don't thought about running.
oh, okay. So, but you,
Jess Moody ran at the same time. And we uprooted the doctor and Seymour Crow, Seymour Crow had a liquor store. They were against the redevelopment. So with us being elected,
mhm.
Bill had sufficient votes to get the redevelopment started. So we started, it'd be late '64, because we were elected. We were elected in April, and during that first 4-year term, we moved the election to November. So Doc and I served 4 years and 7 months on our first term. And
Redevelopment really changed the whole face of Port Hueneme.
it did.
I know they look at Port Wayne, and they look at different areas and call them blighted in order to get them to have redevelopment money. And some people think like Thousand Oaks, the Thousand Oaks Civic Arts Plaza was not really blighted, but here it really was.
Yeah.
Buildings were falling down, abandoned lots, flooding was going on, all kinds of different things. So we really changed things. You really changed things. Yeah. So what are you most proudest of in terms of your long-term?
Well, the way the city looks today, I mean, the improvement we made, the construction of Surfside Drive, which the Coastal Commission, you couldn't build on the seaward side of a street.
Mhm.
So we built
The other
Surfside Drive so we could build on the north side of the street. Main Street was the last street, and they wouldn't let us build beyond Main Street. So we hooked Surfside Drive on the end of Market Street
Oh, I see.
and circled the beach area.
Yeah.
Now we had a sewer plant that was built by the WPA during the Depression. It was a burning plant. They were the best, and they still are the best kind. It was where Miranda Park is today. The person that was, we didn't furnish or generate enough sludge to burn every day, every other day.
Okay.
Sunday was the day to burn. The guy that was scheduled to go to work just decided he would take off on Sunday, but he would go to work early Monday morning, which he did, about 4 o'clock, and he woke up the whole town. When he lit it, it blew. And California don't permit burning plants anymore.
Yes.
So we were in big, big trouble. Oxnard had built theirs right in our back door.
Mhm.
So we had to form a committee, 2 councilmen from Hueneme, 2 from Oxnard, and we got Captain Thorson, which had just retired from the Navy, to be the 5th person on the board, and we negotiated with Oxnard to hook into their plant. That one day off cost about
A lot of money.
$900,000
Yeah.
to build a pipeline to hook on it. And
It's not a very sexy thing to have to be working on sewage and different things like that, but that's part of the job, isn't it?
yeah,
Being on the city council. And can you tell me about the fishing pier? Some people get the fishing pier confused with the old wharf. Now, why did we have a fishing pier? How did that happen?
why do we have one?
A fishing pier. The fishing pier.
Well, we wanted that. That protected the sewer outfall.
Yeah, that was the real reason for it.
Yeah,
So we wouldn't have had one if we didn't have to do that. And you'll notice the difference in the pier too. The pier kind of changes because the water came up. Almost all that Surfside area and the beach that's now there, Hueneme Beach Park, that was all fill, right?
yeah.
That came from the port.
When we dredged the harbor, we had $300,000 in the budget to buy dirt from Broom Ranch to fill in between the railroad tracks and Main Street. And we got 12 million cubic yards when we dredged the harbor. The environmental people said we had to truck that dredge material from the harbor out to the desert, let it dry, and bring it back.
Oh,
Well, we got beyond that. We didn't have to do that. And on Main Street, we pumped it between Main Street and the tracks and beyond the tracks and build up what is Surfside 1 and the houses between the tracks and back, whatever the street name is now, where Main Street was.
yeah.
Now, on Main Street, when we started the redevelopment, on the seaward side was Top Deck, Silver Dollar, and a restaurant. Across the street, on the north side of the street, was a two-story wood frame hotel.
Mhm.
And we let the contract to tear down Top Deck and Silver Dollar. But the contractor got mixed up, unloaded his bulldozer off of a lowboy, drove it into the hotel, tore the hotel down, and we didn't own the hotel. But one of the former councilmen, Ralph McKeon,
Mhm.
owned the hotel, and I think he was proud we tore it down. The newspaper came out that 6 o'clock in the morning the hotel was an eyesore. By 6 p.m. it was a national monument.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But we still got the Top Deck and Silver Dollar torn down and cleared out the area, and it's redeveloped and looks nice down there now.
Well, the redevelopment dollars dried up in 2012. I mean, we couldn't do that anymore.
No.
And that's when cannabis came in, and it was legal in California. What do you think about all that?
Well, of course, I didn't agree with it, but it's like liquor stores. It's here,
Mhm.
and you might as well control it instead of letting it be illegal. So,
Another problem the city council has to deal with is a relationship with the port and with the base.
yeah.
Did you have the same problems that they have now?
We got along real good with the skipper of the Navy base. In fact, he was a big help while I was still on the council when they dredged the small craft harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And they built a jetty out there to catch the sand and then pump it down.
That's where we get our where they get the new
Sand
sand.
replacement every year.
Yeah, every other year. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the time is up, but they're still doing it. But in the beginning, we had a 50-year contract with the Corps of Engineers to pump it down.
Yeah.
And
Now they have to negotiate
yeah,
all the time.
Captain Nash, which later made Admiral, and was the chief of the Seabees back in Washington. He was very instrumental in helping to get that. When Mr. Bard built the harbor, Richard Bard, he only ran the breakwaters halfway out
Yeah.
so the sand could still drift. Now, out the mouth of the harbor is a canyon called Hueneme Canyon. When he built the harbor, 38, that canyon was 1,000 feet deep right out the mouth of the harbor.
Mhm.
When the Navy took over in 41, it was in 43 that they extended the breakwater all the way out to the edge of that canyon. So when the sand from the rivers drifted south, it went in the canyon.
That did the beaches no good.
The swirl from the end of the south breakwater caused a swirl. The beach eroded all the way to Magoo.
Mhm.
Now, Magoo had a very nice officers club right on the beach. It went into the ocean because of the eroded beach.
Mhm.
And that was when they finally built a jetty upstream so they could pump the sand down.
In Channel Islands Harbor.
Yeah.
Well, my last question is, what do you think the future of Port Hueneme is going to be like?
It's here to stay.
Yeah.
It's a very nice, small city. The assessed valuation is up to compare to when we first incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
It was $12,000 or 12 billion, 12.
It's okay, yeah.
Anyway, we had very little money to work with.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of volunteer people.
A lot of service organizations, yeah.
Yeah.
What
So-
happened to those? I know they kind of disappeared after Harbor Days did.
What?
The service organizations disappeared about the same time at the end of the Harbor Days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young families that can't really, volunteer, and then older people. Now you live here in Hueneme Bay, and you must remember when that was the first big development that came in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when these, they call them villas,
Mm-hmm.
duplexes, were not finished. Whenever Joe Boker and his wife split up, and she's the one that had the money.
Oh,
So these were not finished. Now, there was a bunch of businessmen in town, got together and formed a company. They met in this garage,
your garage?
my garage, and I was there. I could have had this house for $38,000, but I wasn't old enough to live out here.
It was retirement, right?
And to get in with that group of men was $10,000.
Oh,
Now, we by chance had 10,000. But since we were not old enough to live out here, we didn't join. Now, if we'd have joined, we'd have made out okay.
mm-hmm.
But I later paid $120 for this house. Now, that dining room
Mm-hmm.
was built when the house was built.
Oh, it was not an add-on,
The
okay.
rest of these places, that's the patio.
Ah,
They don't have the dining room like that. Now this place is 3 bedroom, 3 bath, in the dining room. And
And you're very comfortable here. I want to thank you so much, Orvene. Was a wonderful visit, and thank you for doing this for us.
okay.
That's it.
I was going to say thank him once that
You want me to do it again? Okay.
I could have turned that off.
You know what? It's okay. I've got one just like it. Exactly like it. Probably not as old, but it is 11 o'clock. It's good. But you know, at night when I wake up and I don't know what time it is, I just listen.
Yeah, if I'm awake and hear that, I know.
You know exactly what time it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So Orvene, I want to thank you very much for a wonderful conversation. I learned a lot, and I know that our audience will too. Thank you.